Hey, it's me, Mary, again. This is one of my favorite, it's a Christmas and a Hanukkah book. And it's kind of long, but I really like it. It's by Patricia Polacco. She's one of my favorite writer-illustrators. And almost all of her books, I think, are true. And this one is about her. Okay, it's called The Trees of the Dancing Goats. And here is the cover, Patricia Polacco. And there is a picture of her and her menorah and this thing that looks like a Christmas tree. Right. The Trees of the Dancing Goats. There's lots of snow in this picture. All right, I'm going to try to show you all the picture. This is a 2-page picture. There's her babushka, which is her grandmother. She grew up just outside Union City, Michigan, which is why there's so much snow. There's a lot of snow in Michigan. We didn't celebrate the same holidays as most of our neighbors, but we shared their delight and anticipation of them just the same. So there they have their menorah out. And this is her, Patricia and her big brother, who's in a lot of her stories too. And there's her grandpa. Such cold the winter brings, my babushka said. Remember, babushka means grandmother. As she looked out the window, my bones it makes to ache. Ah, but I knew how much she loved the snow. It reminded her of her home in the Ukraine. My grandfather was from Soviet Georgia, way to the south of Russia. He and Babushka spoke Russian and had wonderful accents. They kept their homelands in their hearts, though they would never be permitted to return. And Mama, there's her mama, rolled into the long driveway. Mama's home, said my brother Richard. Mama drove all the way to Battle Creek every day to teach school, but now she would be off for 2 weeks because of the holiday season. This year we would have a week together to get ready, and then 8 days of Hanukkah. The next day, Mama took our old tarnished menorah, there's the menorah, and asked me to polish it. While I rubbed it, I watched my grandmother make the candles that we would put in it. So there's Babushka making the candles. She tied long strings to a metal rod and dipped them into a pot of melted beeswax that she kept on the stove. And then she hung the wax-covered strings on the wall to dry before dipping them again and again and again. She hummed as she dipped. That takes a long time to make candles out of beeswax. See the candles that are drying there? Grandpa prepared for our festival of lights by carving small toys out of wood. Richard and I weren't supposed to know that he was making them for us. Can you see them? There's some over here. But he did every year, and that afternoon when he went to town, we couldn't help sneaking into his workshop to take a peek. Look, there's a dancing goat. Do you see the dancing goat? I like this one, I said, cradling a little dog in my palm. Grandpa painted animals with colors from his homeland. They were magical. Do you think he made enough for all the 8 days of Hanukkah? Richard asked. You know he has, I whispered. I took one look, knowing that soon Grandpa would wrap them in colored paper. Oh, look at this cool thing Grandpa made. Hangs up and has candles in it. My mother called for me, and I thought she had caught us spying, but she only wanted me to go over to the Kremls to get some cornmeal. The Kremls were our nearest neighbors, and they lived half a mile down the road. They were farmers like us, and at harvest time, Mr. Kreml always helped Grandpa. This is the Kreml's house. I practically lived at the Kreml's house because Cherry Kreml was my very best friend. We especially loved the holiday season. I would watch her family decorate their tree, and she would watch my family light our menorah. Let's see. Made that alarm go away. When I got there, everyone was sick. See, there's Cherry being sick. Even Cherry, who was usually full of energy, as my babushka would say. She was crying. I hope Santa will remember where we live, she said, because we haven't even put up our tree or decorated, and Papa is too sick to get out of bed. For the next few days, my family watched me carefully because everyone in our neighborhood had scarlet fever. But I was fine. So there she's telling everybody about how their neighbors are sick. As the days passed, it was clear that I was not going to get sick, but more and more reports came to us of our neighbors who were sick. The Everetts, the Govlocks, the Thundervalts, the Molskys. It was an epidemic. We were worried about our friends. But Babushka was determined that our Festival of Lights would go on as planned. So there she's making latkes, and Mama is putting chickens in the oven, and the brother is taking the peel off an apple, and Patricia is grating some potatoes for more latkes. And it looks like Grandpa is putting wood in the wood stove so they can cook more. Just as the smell of the wonderful feast met our nostrils, the sun went down and it was time to light the menorah. Grandpa said the blessings and lit the shamas, the candle that we used to light all the others. Babushka put the first candle in the menorah and lit it with the shamas. Then Mama told the story of our people long ago. Tonight, we are celebrating miracle, she said. The miracle that is a very small group of Jewish farmers turned into soldiers could defeat a huge army. Were they really farmers before they were soldiers? Asked Richard. Simple farmers, Grandpa said, just like us. They were fighting so that they could worship in their own way, said my mother. Then there was the miracle of light, said my grandfather. One tiny drop of oil burned in the temple for 8 days. Miracles can even happen today, said my grandfather. After dinner, Grandpa handed us the first of our beautifully wrapped presents. He looked troubled, though. You know, he said, our neighbors are having such a hard time, and this should be a time of happiness for them, too. If only we could do something to help them make their holiday special. Babushka thought for a while. They always bring a tree into their house. Only in America do trees come inside the living room. Carly, we should cut down trees and take them into their houses, said Grandpa. I will cut them tonight, and you can help me, Richard, Grandpa said. We can dress down more chickens and take them some food, Babushka said. Mama and I can decorate the trees, I said. But we have nothing to decorate them with, said my grandmother. What about the carvings, said Mother. They both looked at me. What do you think? They have no way of making their children happy this year. First, I was a little disappointed, but then I thought about it and I knew it was the right thing to do. Our neighbors needed cheering up, and we were just about the only ones who were not sick. Grandpa and Richard brought the cut trees into the living room. They nailed boards onto the bottom of each one so that they could stand up. They were very small trees. Grandpa had only taken the tops of our evergreens, but they were beautiful, and when they were all standing in the living room, it did look like a forest. Like the woods just outside Kiev when I was a girl, Babushka said. Grandpa started hanging some of his wooden animals on the branches of the tree. A dancing goat, said my grandma. There she is. She's got the dancing goat. We shall call these the trees of the dancing goats. And we made sure to put a dancing goat on each tree. As we decorated the trees, we sang and laughed. The single candle in the menorah flickered as we rushed past it to reach another carved animal or to paste together paper chains to hang on the trees. We worked all night. While Grandpa and Richard and I finished decorating, Babushka and Mama roasted more chickens and fried more latkes. They packed the food in baskets, and in each one Babushka put one of her homemade Hanukkah candles. So they will have the light of God in their hearts. We loaded Grandpa's old Ford, which is a kind of a car, with the trees and the food baskets, and sent Babushka and Grandpa into the early light of dawn with their Christmas cheer. Just like Santa Claus, said my brother. Excuse me. We waited eagerly for their return later that morning. Babushka and Grandpa told us about how they went into the house of each neighbor, put the tree up in the living room, put the basket of food on the table, and put a candle in a holder for them to light later. A week later, the 8 nights of Hanukkah had come and gone, and we sat down to have our last feast. There was a knock at our door. Who could that be? Babushka asked. She ran to the door. It was the Kremls, Cherry, and her mom and her dad. They looked pale, but they told us that they were all well. We have something for you, Cherry announced. Her mother and father had tears in their eyes as they hugged my grandparents and my mother. Look what my dad made for you, Cherry said, and she pulled out a menorah. Let's see. It's not in the picture yet. Oh, here it is. It's down here. The menorah that Mr. Kreml had carved out of wood, and on it he had mounted some of the animals that we had given them. So he made a menorah. How beautiful. There it is, said my babushka. Come sit, Grandpa invited them. You are so welcome. Thank you, thank you. Thank you, George, said Mr. Kreml. And they sat down and shared our feast. By this time, our menorah had been lit for an hour or so, and when we lit the candles in the new menorah, we noticed something wondrous. Look, I called out, our old candles are exactly as tall as the new ones. The old ones don't even look burned down, said Mother. It is another miracle, said Grandpa. A miracle indeed, said my grandma, giving me a big hug. We have 2 menorahs now. Our neighbors all recovered from that terrible fever. Few were left with any sickness, and what they had left was a long-cherished memory of the Christmas when Santa really did come, and we called it the Year of the Trees of the Dancing Goats. The end.